Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Funhouse alongside Mr. Martin Popoff. What's going on?
Absolutely. Yeah, good to see you again. I mean, we just
It
saw
was
you
just a couple
last
hours
night.
ago, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we did the great Guitar Hack show on Tone, but yeah, I'm ready to roll. As we were saying last night, it almost feels like winter is back for all of us. We got lots and lots of rain and stuff, but it's supposed to clear up over the weekend, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's still going to be chilly in the 50s today here in New York and rainy. And I think by Sunday, though, the spring weather's coming back, or maybe Monday, something like that. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
good.
We'll see.
Nice.
We're gonna go from winter to summer. You know what's going to
Yeah,
happen,
yeah,
Martin. We talked
for
about that.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who watched this over on Guitar Hack last night, we talked a bit about guitar tone and albums with guitar tone, and we kind of talked a little bit about how sometimes the producer can help certain guitar players with that tone and give us those sounds that we really like. And we mentioned this producer series that we've been doing, and today we're going to continue on with that. We're going to talk about the late British producer Chris Tsangarides, right? The T is silent, right? I've always kind of said it
I
that way.
think so. Yeah, I've been meaning to look. I look up some of these names sometimes, and then you get conflicting results, right? You
Yeah,
play the little YouTube thing, and so who knows? But yeah, Sangarides sounds pretty good to me. So
yeah. So may not have as an extensive a discography of albums that he's worked on compared to some of the other ones that we've done in recent memory, but he was a guy who was involved with a lot of major bands, specifically in hard rock and metal. So what we've done is we've picked out 10 albums that are amongst our favorites from a production standpoint. Um, I don't know about you. You know, we ask this question every time we do these shows. I think he sort of has a certain sound because I noticed like a lot of the albums that I picked, they're in a specific zone, and I don't know if that's the Chris Sangarides sound or whatnot, but there are some similarities here, which I'm sure we'll probably get to during this episode, as opposed to others that we've covered where it's like all over the map,
yeah,
and some do have specific sounds, but I think that when you compare to like a Bob Ezrin or a Roy Thomas Baker. I think Chris is, to me anyway, and maybe you differ, he's more of like a meat and potatoes type of producer
hmm
that just goes for getting the sound that the band is giving him rather than adding all sorts of fluff on top. Do you think that makes sense?
yeah. That part, yes. I'm not sure I agree on having a certain type of sound, but now that you say it, I'm looking at my list and thinking. I think one of the great things about him is he understands metal, so he
Yeah.
knows what to do with all these bands and put them out the other side and get a good result, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting, And bizarrely, yeah, we lost him January 6th, 2018, age 61, pneumonia and heart failure, right?
Yeah.
And I interviewed him. He was a great guy. I talked to him a few times, and yeah, bizarrely, on this point of being a metal guy, I think one of the last things he did, the wiki says this, and then I checked. One of my favorite new wave of British heavy metal albums of all time is More Blood and Thunder. So way later in the no legitimate lineup, years and years. More is actually still going. Every time I put up something on Facebook about them, they chime in and say, "Great, thank you, Martin," kind of thing, right? But but one of the last things he did was he was playing guitar in More. And it said something about having recorded an album, but I don't see an album anywhere there. So maybe there's a shelved More album or something. I don't know. No, the More guys will probably respond and let me
Everything
know what the
exactly.
heck's
So maybe
going
we'll
on.
get to the bottom of this mystery, right, at some
Yeah,
point.
but he absolutely knows his metal, and that I think is one of the cool things about him. And his I guess his first engineering job is he was one of the guys along for Sad Wings of Destiny way back when, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
So should we do what we've been doing? Three, 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 and our
Okay.
quick ones, right?
Yep. Sounds good. Okay. So I'll kick off with my first three. I'm gonna start with Bruce Dickinson, Tattooed Millionaire, 1990. I don't have a physical of this anymore. But I did go and play it. And you know what? I've always thought this about this album. And so it comes out in the hair metal era. This is Bruce. He hasn't left Maiden. But what he does is he makes a kind of hair metal friendly album, but he's smart enough to realize that he doesn't want to be a hair metal guy. And it's fortunate that he worked with Chris Tsangarides because um, There aren't a lot of hair metal travesties all over this album from a production point of view as well. So I think the two of them work together to keep this thing in line. And what you end up with is just a good kind of meat and potato sort of album. There you go. Yeah, and the singles all had this nice graphic display too. It's a great cover, right?
Yeah.
And it was a cool title as well. But yeah, I think one of the cool things about this album is it just sounds like a good traditional timeless production where it could have gone a little south because the songs do lean a little bit playful, a little bit commercial, a little bit accessible. But yeah, together they work out and come out with a solid album. Number 9, I went with Black Sabbath, The Eternal Idol. This is my favorite of all the Tony Martin albums. Um, and I think they get a great sound on here. It's kind of like a big, boomy, sort of atmospheric, big drums sort of sound. Like there's a lot of players and even, frankly, a lot of producers on here as well. You've got Jeff Glicksman, Air Studios Montserrat, Vic Coppersmith, Heaven Air Studios, London, Chris Tsangarides, spelt wrong in 2 places on the back cover, Battery Studios, London. So yeah, a lot of sessions went into this album, but he is one of the guys involved. And I think this sounds really good. It sounds like a big kind of world-beating band, and the songs are fantastic on here. These are yeah, easily for me the best songs from that whole era. And then number 8, I don't have a physical of this either. Girl, Sheer Greed, the first of the 2 girl albums, January 1980, Jet Records, you know, the notorious Don Arden label, right?
Oh yeah.
And we've got Phil Lewis and Phil Collin. This is kind of what they're famous for. But the thing is, the second album, Wasted Youth, is very scrappy. But the first one is gorgeously produced. It sounds very, very expensive. It's got a beautiful front cover as well with this sort of treated photo of the band. They got a nice logo. Could have been huge. It's actually one of these bands that we should be talking about in terms of like a Stars or a King's X. Like, man, this could have been bigger, right? A very Americanized sound right there at the beginning of the new wave British heavy metal. They just really didn't fit in a box, but it's a great sounding album. I think the production is absolutely first rate on it for a baby band, and I'm sure Jet Records didn't give much of a budget to work on this. So there you go. That's my first 3.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. Well, another one of those coulda, shoulda, woulda, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my number 10, I'm gonna go with Back on the Streets by Gary Moore,
Okay.
Martin's favorite guitar player.
Yeah. More on him
So,
later, though.
what's that?
More on him later, though.
Oh, well, very
Yeah.
cool. All right. Sounds good. This is sort of, the interesting thing about Gary Moore's solo career is like he worked with so many different producers. And as a result of that, like every album sounds completely different than the one that came before it. I don't know if that really worked for him when you look at his whole solo career, because I think that there was just the very different sounds from album to album to album. And there wasn't a lot of consistency there from a production standpoint. But this is like, it's real mid-rangey, but I think it works here because here I think Gary's in this kind of transition mode. He's coming off the Coliseum 2 years, doing all the fusion stuff. He's still holding on to a little of that kind of raw bluesy early sound, but moving into more of the hard rock. So you get a little bit of that hard rock, the blues rock, fusion stuff. And I think that Gary's guitar tone on this album takes that kind of aggressive edge of the Coliseum 2 fusion albums, but is roaring headfirst into the 80s for more of the hard rock stuff. I think, and there's a lot of instrumentals on here, which are pure fire. His vocals are produced pretty well because, again, we're just getting used to Gary as being a singer here in his own band. And I think there are, Victims of the Future, I think, has a much better production from more of like that hard rock standpoint. But because this has so much different material of different musical styles, I think it really works here. So that's my number 10. My number 9, which I know is going to show up on Martin's list, I'm going to go with Thin Lizzy Renegade. Now, it's not one of my favorite Thin Lizzy albums. I know Martin loves this. I like it. It's not one of my top ones, but I always like the way this sounds. I think there are certain songs on here that have a great, great production, bigger production that really works. I mean, I think Scott and Snowy's guitars sound massive on this album. I think that Chris really knows how to produce guitars, and guitar players specifically. I think the keyboards are just high enough in the mix. Brian's drums are real crisp. Songs like Angel of Death, Pressure Will Blow, Leave This Town in Hollywood all have that classic Thin Lizzy sound, which is what you really want. Go watch Hack's show last night. I talk a bit about the Thin Lizzy guitar sound and the tones and all that sort of thing. And I think that Chris really dialed in very nicely on this particular album. That's my number eight. Number nine. My number eight. Here's a weird one. When I found out that he produced this album, I was quite surprised because I like this album a lot. And it's Fireworks by Angra,
Yeah.
South American power metal, progressive metal band. To my knowledge, the only album of this type that Chris ever worked on. This one has lots of artsy flair to it, which I don't think is something I normally would say with some of his other productions. And again, I always love how he produces guitar players, but here he does a really great job with Andre Matos, the singer, who also plays all the keyboards on here. It's a very keyboardy album as opposed to a guitar album. I mean, listen to tracks like Lisan and Wings of Reality. They almost have this kind of Queen like art rockness to them, even though it's big and bombastic. Again, not as guitar oriented as some of the other Angra albums, but I think it really works with all these kind of fast uh, progressive power metal type tracks. Really, really good. Very different. I think out of all the ones on my list, this is the one that's the most different from a production standpoint. So that's my 10, 9, and 8, Gary Moore, Thin Lizzy, and Angra.
Nice. Yeah, that Anger album is very well produced. Yeah,
Yeah, right. It's
you're
very
right.
different for him.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I must confess, I didn't even go back and check Back on the Streets because I hate that album so much. And the only thing worse is Grinding Stone from the Gary Moore band. But I have Gary Moore next, and I only have my advance of this album. But Scars. So I mean, I could have gone with Back to the Blues. I could have gone with Power of the Blues. I love Gary in this era, and I think Chris is just working with him in a great way. It's almost like Gary comes alive as like a George Thorogood kind of character. There's a lot of like energy and enthusiasm. I think there's a lot of personality to his vocals as well. And Chris just gets a nice power trio vibe out of the band. Maybe even a little ZZ Top, but no, more so it's mid rangey. It's got good high end. It's got a lot of punch at the bottom end. This whole era. I was really bought into Gary Moore, and I was interviewing him during this era as well, so I was sold on it by Gary. But I do feel like it's almost like he discovered what to do with this blues persona of himself, and it's to be like
Threw that little bit of rock edge back into it, which I
yeah. He's like just got a little bit of this George Thorogood kind of I don't know how to put it, rambunctiousness, enthusiasm, kind of thing. So that is my number 7. My number 6, I went with Exodus, Force of Habit. Which a lot of people put this album down. This is one of their famous slowing down and getting heavier and getting less thrashy. And it's got the artsy cover on it as well, the Ralph Steadman. I love this album. I think it's great, and it sounds massive. The guitars are huge on this album, but he still manages to have good quality bottom end and good highs on it as well. But it is all about these big warm, concrete sledge rhythm guitars. And so I think he does a great job with Exodus on this. I've never had any problem with that album. Next, I'm going with Judas Priest, Painkiller. I'm sure we're going to see this a little later, I think. This album, over the years, it's just slowly gone down in estimation for me because I just can't get over the kind of lyrical situation and everything kind of just being about how heavy the band is. But production wise, it's absolutely molten guitars, that word you like, and great punchy drums from the new drummer Scott Travis on here. Just very meticulous. You can just hear everything so clear. It sounds very computerized, but before really that can be done in a truly cheating computerized way as time goes on. This is 1990, right? But everybody loved the production of this album. It's almost like they achieve the hammering between the hammer and the anvil crunch of Ram It Down, but with a true drummer in there playing, and everybody just raising their game. So yeah, it's like this great reunion with Priest from back in the day, and they do an amazing job on that. So that is my 7, 6, and 5.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that successful production that we got on Screaming for Vengeance. because really it's the first really great. Because I mean, Defenders has the songs. I'd argue that Defenders production is a little weird,
Yeah.
but it's the first time they get back to that since that other album.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Let's see what we got. My number seven is The Eternal Idol. I agree with everything you said. I think Chris gets the band, and again, there are a couple people working on this album, but I think that the production of this album gets as close to the Mob Rules sound that Martin Birch got that they've had since. I mean, the drums are kind of wet and splishy. Is that even a word? Splishy.
Yeah.
The guitar, the guitars are big and thick and menacing. And Tony Martin is nice and high in the mix, and he's got that. He really comes through the mix, kind of the way Dio used to on those couple of albums. And I think it really makes a statement for their brand new singer. Here's our new album. And the songs are great, right? I think I agree with you. You know, this may or may it's either my favorite or second favorite of the albums from the Tony Martin period because I really like Headless Cross a lot too, but I think this is a better sounding album than all of them. So really, really good stuff there. My number six is going to be Toolbox by Ian Gillan.
Mm, yeah.
So, by 1991, I think that, we're needing because, we all know what's going on with Deep Purple, right? I think we needed another kind of like heavy rock album from Ian Gillan, and this one totally delivers. Not only does is he produce fantastically, his vocals sound great on this album. He's screaming, he's powerful, potent, but this album is loaded with screaming, super crunchy riffs and solos all over the place. You can say what you want about the songwriting, but this is a powerful sounding album. And Steve Morris, is that the guy's name? I think the guitar
Yeah.
player on the album.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's a shame we haven't heard more from him because I think he's fantastic on this. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. Chris knows how to produce guitar players, and I think from a crisp and crunchy, big and bold standpoint, this is one of the best guitar productions out of a lot of the albums that I'm talking about. So really, really good stuff. That's my number six. My number five is also Tattooed Millionaire.
Hmm.
What I really like about this album, you kind of hinted at it, it doesn't sound at all like an Iron Maiden album. There's absolutely
Yeah.
nothing about the production that sounds Iron Maiden. To me,
Yeah.
it has more in common with bands like Tesla or Badlands, and I don't think
Yeah.
that's necessarily a bad thing. Because out of the whole Bruce catalog, other than like Skunk Works, I think this one sounds really unique in his catalog. It's very kind of 80s sounding. It's not a hair metal album, but it's got that production style. Very anthemic. The guitars are bright in the mix. The drums are recorded very, very well, but there's not this big dripping echo epicness of like Iron Maiden at all. And I think that was really important for him at this time in his career. So yeah, that's my seven, six, and five: Sabbath, Gillan, and Dickinson.
Nice. Okay. My number four, I'm going with Anvil Forged in Fire. I think this is a really kind of how would you call it? I mean, it's definitely got a lot of high mids and it's got a lot of treble as well, but Chris just manages to capture Rob Reiner magnificently as a drummer. He's almost like a better version of a drum tornado than Dave Lombardo. Lip sounds amazing in here. The guitars, again, like you say, great point. He really knows how to capture guitars. This is just a lively, well recorded, but it's got just enough grit to it as well. Type of album. He's working at Phase One in Toronto with them. So this came out April 13th, 83. But my number three is also Anvil. I'm going with Metal on Metal, and I put this one a little higher. So it's the first time they're working together, and I think what you get here it reminds me a little bit of that idea of the first time out Magic and the second time it's just a little different, maybe a little more self-aware. So it reminds me a little bit of King Crimson Discipline into Beat or Ride the Lightning into Master of Puppets kind of thing. So I think there's just a slightly elevated level of excitement here, and this is just a little more powerful. It's almost like on Forged in Fire, they were trying to get a little more meticulous and polished, but with the same sort of material. Both albums are absolute classics. But yeah, the sounds that Chris gets out of Rob's toms, his snare, the bass drum, everything sounds really, really vibrant and exciting. And and it's close to a thrash production versus a cheap speed metal production. But the songs are boy, how would you describe the songs of Anvil? I mean, this is such an important sort of era. This new wave British heavy metal into speed metal into thrash thing, and Anvil are almost like technical extreme metal. It's almost a little progressive in ways. Due to Rob more than anything. But yeah, both productions are really, really good. Better than anything you're going to get on Shrapnel Records or Metal Blade early on or
Oh yeah.
Exciter or any of that stuff. Better than pretty much every new wave of British heavy metal production you can imagine. And it's frankly a semi baby band working in Toronto, right? And yeah, I think he does an amazing job with them. My number two, I'm going with Y&T Mean Streak. And this I think has so Max Norman did the previous album, Black Tiger, which kind of gets a similar sound. I almost feel like Chris is whether it came from the band, because the band has a totally different identity on Earthshaker, totally different from Struck Down, totally different from the debut. But it's almost as if the band loved the sound of Black Tiger so much that they kind of said, we want an album that sounds a little bit, I'm speculating here, or Chris is picking up a little bit of what Max Norman did. But the production on this is really it's got a lot of personality. It's not a normal production. The other thing that it has in it, besides having some Black Tiger, is it has some Spencer Proffer Quiet Riot kind of thing going on. A little bit of a Wasp thing, a little bit of a Kick-Axe thing, even though it's 1983. And there's I don't know what order they came in, whether Metal Health was earlier or not, but they're not borrowing from Metal Health, put it that way. But it's got a little bit of that thing that Spencer Proffer's totally going to be known for. Condition Critical, Icon, whether it's a Spencer Proffer production or not, working at Pasha kind of thing. So this is how you get Wasp in there. You definitely get Tom Werman getting a Spencer Proffer sound on Theater of Pain in a big way. But yeah, so this really has a sound that is not particularly, I wouldn't really pin it to what Chris does generally, but it's just it's a sound with a lot of personality and a good amount of eccentricity to it. Okay, my number one is Thin Lizzy Renegade. I think this is probably the best sounding Thin Lizzy album, although even a lot of people aren't happy with the songs. But also a lot of people aren't happy with the production, that they think it's too clean and behaved and regal sounding. And the guitars don't have as much bite, but what I love is the guitars have a lot of authority, but it's more of a real sort of analog 70s sound. The drums are very plush. Brian Downey gets an amazing sound on here. But yeah, we know Chris does the next one as well, which is very harsh. But even the one before this, Chinatown, has a little bit of that flick of the switch harshness to it as well. It's a different harsh than the follow-up, but I don't think they ever get the closest they ever get to this is Johnny the Fox, I think, in terms of a warmth. But this is very, very warm sounding, beautiful sounding album, and I think it really plays to the kind of the melancholy of the songs. I've always said my favorite songs on here are songs nobody really talks about very much because they are too mellow, like It's Getting Dangerous, No One Told Him, and the title track Renegade. Those are my favorite songs on here. So they're not the heavy metal rockers in particular. But yeah, absolutely high fidelity. This is the Thin Lizzy Steely Dan album. And I think, yeah, my number one, Chris Tsangarides production.
Yeah, I would argue that Johnny the Fox is the best sounding Thin Lizzy album. But
Yeah.
Renegade sounds great. Like
Yeah.
I said, it's not one of my favorite albums, but from a production standpoint, it's one of their best, easily.
Yeah. Nice.
All right, my number 4 is Spellbound by Tigers of Pantang.
Yeah.
Love the way the drums are recorded on here. The guitars are crisp, yet still crunchy. I also think the vocals sound fantastic on this album. I love how you got two very different guitar players playing in this band, and I love how they're both really distinct in the mix, and they're so crystal clear that when each one is playing, you know, okay, that's that guy. Okay, that's that guy. And while I think that John Sykes would be better produced going forward on another album I'm going to talk about in a minute. I still think you hear the potential of this guy right on this album. And the songs are great on here. And I think from this era of new wave of British heavy metal, I think this is one of the better produced albums that we get out of that whole period. So that's my number four. Number three, yeah, it might be harsh, Martin in spots, but I always loved the way Thunder and Lightning sounded by Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
This is what they were going for, right? This is their
Yeah.
total heavy metal album, and but there's plenty of subtlety on this album too. But man, I remember the first time I heard Cold Sweat on the radio, I was like, Jesus, that's Thin Lizzy? Holy cow. I
Yeah.
mean, the title track, I mean, there's just some cranking stuff on here. But then I really like stuff like, The Holy War, The Sun Goes Down, Bad Habits, Heart Attack. I mean, all these really cool, quirky kind of songs, just sounding great. And Gorham and Sykes just sound absolutely massive on here. And for everything that Phil was going through at the time physically, um, they got a really good vocal out of him on this album. I think Chris really produced his voice really, really nicely. So that's my number three. My number two is Painkiller. And, this is not what Pete Pardo would normally do, but I remember when I first heard this album, I was thinking, holy hell, those drums are massive. Did he really just like talk about the drums and not the guitars, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Scott Travis was the right guy for this band at this time with this producer because I think one of the things that makes this album so great is Scott's drumming. I mean, he is just thunderous on this album and he's so high in the mix, so good. The guitars are more menacing than ever. Rob has produced just spectacularly here. Um, yeah, he got that metal production out of them. And I think they really needed this. And yeah, is it kind of there's a little bit of the cheese factor here as well, and like they were overdoing the whole priest is back, more metal than ever type of thing, and then then Rob leaves and whatever, there's all the momentum is gone. But I think this was the album they needed moving into the 90s, and I think breaking away from what we heard on Turbo and Defenders is great, but like I mentioned, not a great production. Ram It Down, yeah, but this gets back to the Screaming for Vengeance. That's what we really wanted from them. So my number two and my number one, if you could hold it up, because my copy is buried in my closet. Mean Street by Y&T.
Mhm.
Love it. To me, the best produced Y&T album. It's just absolutely cranking. I think the drums are a little on the dry side, but I love the way the guitars and the vocals sound on this album. To me, the band has never sounded more ferocious, and I agree with you 100%. I think they really liked the way Black Tiger sounded, and they wanted more of that. And I would argue this is even a better production than Black
Yeah.
Tiger. It's a shame they kind of dialed back on things for the albums going forward because I think the production on the next couple albums are a little bit more tame, going for more of a commercial sound. I like this album is raw, it's meticulous, it's like I said, the guitars just like jump out at you, just so good. And Dave Meniketti, the way his vocals are produced on this album, you would swear, oh, he's the guitar player, really? He just sounds like one of the greatest frontmen out there at the time, right?
Yeah.
So good.
Exactly.
And I,
Yeah.
never understood he never got the credit as a vocalist, or as a good, is that a thing, Martin, when a guy is like a really good singer and a really good guitar player that he doesn't really get recognized for either because he's doing both? Because I think he was spectacular,
It's a great point. I feel a show idea coming on.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I always thought it's like he's one of the greatest singers. Nobody talks about him. He's one of the greatest
And
guitar
he
players.
sounds a lot like Sammy Hagar, and he looked like Sammy Hagar too, right?
You know something? I said that to someone not that long ago. I said, "Don't you get like Sammy Hagar vibes from Dave Meniketti?" And they looked at me like I had two heads. Like, really? I don't hear that at all. I've always thought that.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
I've
Yeah.
always thought he had that young Sammy thing going on.
Yeah.
No,
And Sammy plays a guitar and sings too, right? So
right, right.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe not quite the guitar player that Dave is, but
yeah, yeah.
pretty damn good, right? Pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I guess this is another one of those bands, and we've said it before, but I keep kind of forgetting it, and it needs reiterating. This is a band that really should have been way bigger than they were, right? At this time, being in the right place at the right time with an album like this in 1983, they should have just went right into that pack with Dawkins and Rat and Great White and all those guys, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why it didn't happen for them in a big way.
Yeah.
Maybe because their music, Martin, is kind of like sits in between certain genres and it never fully dips into. I don't know. They're one of those bands that had that style that constantly was morphing a little bit, and maybe they didn't stay in one zone for too long. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like the first two albums were more in that kind of like mid 70s hard rock, bluesy hard rock, proto metal thing, but it was a little
Yeah.
too late for that. And then you had those next three albums, which were great, but didn't really catch on. Then they went totally into the more clammy hair metal type thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Weird. Weird.
Nice, nice. One thing I wanted to bring up too, oddly enough, Tragically Hip, Fully Completely, massive, massive, huge album here in Canada, might actually be his biggest hit, because I believe that record, I didn't check this, but Tragically Hip definitely has some. This might be the biggest selling Tragically Hip album, and if it is, it's definitely sold more copies than Painkiller, even, right? Because
In
Painkiller
Canada.
went gold. Well, Painkiller went gold in the States.
Yes, yes.
Fully Completely has sold more copies, period. Like it's over 500. It might be 800, or even it might be over 1 million copies. Uh,
Worldwide.
no, but it's all in Canada.
Well, in
That's
Canada.
the point. I mean, there's such a massive, massive, massive band, right?
Yeah, they've never
Uh,
done anything here. Yeah.
exactly. But they do have some albums that, had they been selling in the States, would have actually gone gold with those Canadian numbers, right? And I interviewed the guys, and I brought up Chris. This wasn't even very long ago, and I think they went with him based on Concrete Blonde. I think he produced Concrete Blonde, and it was from that. So they're not a heavy metal band. They're not coming from that area, and it's not because of his heavy stuff. But yeah, I don't know. The production's kind of here and there on it. It's just very good and correct and conservative sort of thing. But yeah, and Thunder and Lightning. I don't know. I've kind of to me the harshness is too harsh for me. It definitely does have a lot of grit on it, right? But you coming from a guitar point of view and being a guitar player, I mean, I can understand why you love that, from what you get there. And Spellbound, you're right. I mean, a cool thing about Spellbound is it just sounds really meticulous and professional.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool list, cool list. Yeah, sadly, too bad we lost him. He was a super nice guy. And he's just very upbeat, funny guy. And yeah, you could tell bands loved working with him. UFO was another band you worked with a bunch, right?
Yeah, much
A
later on.
bunch, or yeah, I can't remember how many albums, but yeah, it was one of those later on kind of
Later
deals.
albums, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
saw that on the list, and I was kind of like, I'm not a really big fan of the album, and I was like, nothing stood out to me from a production standpoint.
yeah. And from a production point of view, it is also just super correct and professional, but nothing much to talk about.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. All right. Any ideas on who you want to cover next?
No, I never really thought about it.
You want to do
Terry
Mutt Lang?
Terry Date, maybe Terry Date.
Terry Date? Yeah,
Mutt Lang, yeah, Mutt Lang's a good choice. Let's do Mutt Lang next. What the
do
heck?
Mutt Lang next? Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Lot to choose from. So,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Cool. All right.
There you have it, everybody. Start getting your Mutt Lang list together.
Yeah.
You have 2 weeks to prepare. So, Martin, what's going on over with the podcast and the Contrarian Live? You're busy on the Contrarians lately. Holy cow.
Yeah, knocking off a bunch of short shows, just usually putting 3 in a file, sending it off to Grant. Hey, just get them going. And Marco, they're kind of splitting the duties. But yeah, we just figured flood the zone kind of thing. An idea comes to mind, do it. So a lot of Contrarian shows. The audio podcast numbers are ticking up there as well. History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. Books wise, I've got the Guns N' Roses coming in a week or two, or probably this week. But the big Iron Maiden book is out now, selling a bunch of that. Hallowed by Their Name, the unofficial Iron Maiden Bible, and yeah, a bunch of other books, of course, all at martinpopoff.com.
Cool. All right. So we'll see you all back here in 2 weeks for Mutt Lang. And between now and then, let's see, what do we got coming up? We got the Professor's Picks coming up later today. Ken Golden and I will be talking about new releases that are releasing today on this Friday, the 23rd of May. Tomorrow, Jamie Laszlo will be manning another show of the review crew with a new crew, new albums to talk about. And then on Sunday, you'll get a double shot of ranking the albums. I will be ranking the catalog of the great Dutch prog band Super Sister, and George Lemay will be ranking the catalog of the great progressive metal power metal band Conception. So that's coming up on Sunday. So stay tuned for all that. Have a great weekend, everybody. For my friends here in the States, happy Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy your time off and spending time with friends and family or just hanging out at home doing nothing. That's cool too. For Martin Popoff, I'm Pete Pardo. Have a good one, everybody. See you soon. Bye bye.